Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Paddock. I hope that you're doing well. For today's social studies, we're going to be talking about Remembrance Day, and I have a story for you. It is called The Soldier's Puppy, okay? And it is by Peter Millett and Trish Bowles. In the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, in the middle of war, a puppy was born. A soft-spoken girl called Lucy gently stroked the newborn puppy's shimmering coat. "I think I'll call you Frida," she whispered. Lucy's family loved Frida very much, but they couldn't afford to keep her. They already had one too many hungry mouths in the house to feed. So one day, Frida was placed in a box and left by the side of the road. And it says here, "Puppy free to a good home." Lucy sat watching over her, hoping and praying that no one would notice her. She didn't actually want anybody to take her, right? But a young soldier on his way to war noticed the beautiful little puppy, and he scooped her up into his arms. "What's your puppy's name?" he asked. "Frida," Lucy whispered. "What's yours?" "My name is Sam." The soldier smiled and hugged Frida. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of you. And when the war is over, I promise I'll bring Frida back to you, Lucy, safe and sound." Oh, that sounds good. Sam's commanding officer couldn't believe that Sam wanted to take a puppy along with him on his way to the battlefront. "Are you mad?" he boomed. "A war zone is no place to raise a young dog." "No worries," said Sam, grinning. "She's going to be my good luck mascot." Sam's first week at the front wasn't as bad as he thought it would be, but during the second week, when the attacks began, it was worse than he could ever have imagined. With the earth shaking and rocking all around him, he felt like crying, but he didn't. He knew he had to be brave. He had to be brave for Frida. In the middle of Sam's little cubbyhole in the dirt, Frida grew bigger each day. Soon, she was big enough to scare the rats that scuttled about throughout the trenches. Trapped in their grimy prison, Sam and Frida shared everything they had. They shared their blankets, their corned beef, their biscuits, and water. They even shared their fleas. Yikes! I don't know if I want to share my fleas with my dog. Sam spent many hours writing letters to his mother back home. He never mentioned the horrible sights or the sounds that surrounded him. He only wrote stories about his beautiful little friend, who was the bravest puppy he had ever seen in his life. At Christmas time, he sent his mom a picture of Frida. So there's the picture that he sent to his mom. And it says, "This is what Frida looks like. She has lots of spots," right? Look at her. She's all dressed up for Christmas. That's kind of funny. Day after day, the explosions became louder and louder. The long, cold nights at the front soon turned into long, terrifying months. Sam never knew if he would live to see the next day, but he knew that he had to because he promised Lucy that he would bring Frida home safe and sound. Soon, Sam began to wonder if it was only Frida's luck that was keeping him alive. His friends prayed that her luck would somehow protect them too. They all loved Frida. Every day, Sam lost more and more of his friends at the Western Front, friends that he had grown up with, friends that he had played sports with at school. These were friends that he would never see again. Soon, Frida was the only friend that Sam had in the world. As the months slowly turned into years, Sam became more and more upset by the fighting. He was sick of this endless explosions. He was sick of all the crying. He just wanted to go home. And then one day, the roaring guns fell silent. The generals decided that it was time for the fighting to end and that there was going to be no more bullets to fire and there was going to be no more tears to cry. Sam and Frida slowly emerged from their muddy trench. Sam, well, he was no longer a boy. And Frida, well, she was no longer a puppy, right? She's pretty big. After a long journey home, Sam took Frida back to the house where he had found her. Sam was surprised to see a young woman there, not a girl. "Frida!" Lucy cried as she ran down the path to greet them. Sam smiled at her. "I told you I'd bring her back safe and sound." He hugged the dog and he placed a medal around her neck. "Thank you, girl," he whispered. "I couldn't have survived the war without you." During the months that followed, Sam came back to visit Frida and Lucy. And then during one of his visits, something very special happened. Sam and Lucy got married. Aw, isn't that sweet? And there we have it. So there's our story. 1 year later, in the middle of the night, in the middle of winter, in the middle of Sam's farm, a beautiful little baby was born. And do you know what they named her? They named her Frida. So the baby's named Frida, just like the puppy. Okay, very cool. So there we have it. So a little story. That's part of our Remembrance Day collection of stories. And again, it's called The Soldier's Puppy. The Soldier's Puppy. Kind of a little bit of a sweet story for Remembrance Day. Okay, I love you all and I miss you, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.